Good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. It's just after 9:30, and we might have some more people joining, but a good number of you are already online and connected to audio. So welcome to our webinar. So we are hosting this as the Renewing Communities Initiative, and it's a statewide initiative whose purpose is to build college opportunities for both currently and formerly incarcerated Californians. And it's a joint initiative between the Opportunity Institute, where Rebecca Silbert and I are housed. I'm Laura Van Tassel. I don't think I said my name. So we're here at this nonprofit. It's kind of a cradle-to-career nonprofit. And we work with Debbie Mukumal down at the Stanford Criminal Justice Center. And as part of our work, we have pilot sites, 7 of them across the state. But then we also try to do work more broadly to help build the field, connect you guys to each other, and help all of you on the ground have better programs. And so today, the purpose of this webinar is to try to help the colleges connect with CDCR, and we have 2 panelists online that will hopefully give you guys a lot of answers to your questions and clarify a lot of things for you today. We know there's confusion about sometimes what you hear from the one prison where you work and what you hear is possible at another prison that has a college program. So we're hoping to get everyone here on this webinar today to learn a lot from each other. So a little bit of housekeeping for how the webinar will work. Okay, so most of you, it looks like, figured out how to log in and how to be here. In the control panel, you should have a pop-up. There's a picture of it here. It probably looks something like this. The orange arrow, you can collapse or expand your control panel if it's in your way. But most importantly, there's the questions box. So you can see where it says enter a question for staff, and that's how you can type us questions and we'll be able to see them. And we will be feeding questions as they come up. So feel free to type in a question at any moment, and as appropriate, we will ask it during the presentation. So make sure you know how to use that feature. I do want to emphasize, I know a lot of you wanted a recording, and then there are many people that are not able to join today that want to listen in later. So we are recording this. The recording started as soon as I started talking, and the recording will be automatically added to a follow-up email that you should receive Monday morning. If you don't receive it, certainly reach out to me and we'll find another way to get it to you. But just know that it's being recorded. You'll have both the audio and the presentation in your inbox on Monday morning. The only other selection, I think most of you figured it out, under the audio portion, make sure if you dialed in that you have the telephone option selected. And if you're just using your computer audio, make sure mic and speakers is selected. But I think that is it for housekeeping. And certainly you can also use the questions box to ask us questions if tech issues come up. Okay, so we've, through our work, both with our pilot sites and through talking to a lot of you at various trainings and other, and kind of calling around, we know that for those of you teaching face-to-face inside state prisons, that you really want to mirror the on-campus student experience as much as possible. And you recognize that there are constraints, but if you could have computers that are up to date and have similar capability as much as possible to the ones that you have on campus, any sort of internet that you guys could get, I know you would be eager to do that for registration and research and other academic needs and administrative needs. Flash drives, some people are already using them, and I know a lot would be interested in using them however they can. And then and we also know that you would expect to pay similar prices and want the same sort of access and budget that you might have on campus as much as possible. And then you want to know how to do all of this, so how to get new technology in and how it all works, how to get it set up, how to maintain it, and everything else. So that is kind of what we plan, the setup for the webinar. So as I said, I am Laura Van Tassel. at the Opportunity Institute. I'm here with Rebecca Silbert, and we work with Debbie Mukamal at Stanford. So we are the Renewing Communities team. And today on the webinar, our main presenters, we have two people from CDCR who are going to be taking us through the presentation and answering your questions. So we have Devin Holmes, who's the Deputy Director of Field Operations and Infrastructure Support within the Enterprise Information Systems, which is abbreviated EIS, as you may have seen and will see on the presentation. And we also have Brant Choate here, who's the Superintendent of the Office of Correctional Education within CDCR. So I'm going to turn it over to them, and they're going to take you through the presentation and answer some questions as they come up. So Devin and Brant, it's all yours.
Good morning, everybody. We appreciate you being on the line with us this morning. My name is Devin Holmes. Again, as mentioned, I'm the Deputy Director over the Field Operations. What that means is that all of the IT staff that work at the prisons and throughout CDCR actually report up through me. We have about 340 staff statewide that take care of the infrastructure, not only at the prisons, but at the headquarters and other field offices. And so that's my main focus.
And I'm Brant Choate. I'm the Superintendent of the Office of Correctional Education. And we provide oversight over all 35 prisons and the schools that are within the prisons. And Devin and I work very closely together here at what we call headquarters to make sure that we're working together, and what we roll out can be statewide and looking into the future as well. And I thought one thing we could mention here at the beginning is talk a little bit about the future, and just to let you know that we're very familiar with technology and what is going on in the college systems and in other K-12 systems and different technology that's available. So as we often talk to colleges out there, a lot of times colleges will want to come to us and try to teach us as to how we ought to do things. And the assumption is that we don't know because we don't have it yet. That's not the case. We know we don't have it yet, but we do know. And we actually have a direction of where we're headed, and things are looking good for the future. So we can go ahead and
the example that I like to give is one of our oldest prisons, San Quentin, was built in 1859, and as we all know, in 1859 they did not have the internet. We are still working with a number of prisons that are, very old as far as the infrastructure, to where we are just now getting some of those prisons the ability to actually have computers in those areas. And when we actually, had to put in the infrastructure, meaning the wiring and things along those lines, we've got to core through 3 feet of granite in order to get a wire into that classroom. And so there are some folks that don't understand, well, why can't you just drop a wire in there? It's easy to get through a wall, not when you got to go through 3 feet of granite. So keep in mind that some of the prisons that we're working with, we really have to figure out how do we get things in there, what are some of the technologies that we can use. I think the other thing to keep in mind and remember is that really technology, as far as the inmates, is new. We have only been introducing it really in the last couple of years, bringing in some of the outside technology to them, because prior to that, the thought process was house an inmate and just let them sit there. To whereas now the focus really has shifted huge, a big shift as far as rehabilitation, because many of the tools that we were using previously were paper-based, and many of those tools are no longer available to us and available to the inmates, to where we now have to use technology. And the one really that started it for us a couple of years ago was GED. The vendor that produces the GED testing basically told us we are no longer doing this in paper. And so we were forced to really come up with a method that would allow the inmate to be able to sit down to actually take the test and to get his GED credentials. And so really that's where it started, and that's where we're continuing to go.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and start with the first slide. And we mentioned Chaffey College here because they were really kind of the forerunners as far as bringing technology into the prison. They've had their own lab inside California Institute of Women for years, and they've actually maintained the lab, and they've shared files with thumb drives and things like that. And what we've done is we've taken that technology most recently because of the various grants that were offered out there, and we created a college image, which essentially gave the colleges that are teaching business programs and whatnot where they need computers a little higher access than what was part of what was typical in the old Chafee lab. So we want to talk to you a little bit about what that image process is and how we do that, just so you can understand what goes on behind the scenes. Do you want to talk about that, Devin, a little bit about the college image?
Yeah, so literally what we do is anytime that we have a computer here, we will create an image specific to that computer, because we will then send that image out to the various correctional sites, CDCR sites, the institutions, so that way the IT field staff can take that image and then apply it to each of the computers that it needs to be. That way they're not installing the programs one at a time on each individual computer. It also allows us to use those images across the board. And so really what we've been doing over the last couple of years is coming up with a standard image that we can use the same across the board. Makes it that much easier. We know we've already tested it. It's already been locked down specific. That way inmates can use it. We know they can't get access to the C drive and do some of the other things that they want to do with coding and things along those lines. So it's really simplified the process for us as far as supporting it once that image has been created. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through.
Yeah, so creating an image takes a lot of time and effort, and I think the first college where we did the image for was Lassen Community College at the High Desert. And once you have that template, then you can replicate it in multiple areas without having to go through that setup time. So it doesn't mean that our college image won't change. It's going to change over time. But the easiest way for us to, this last year, set up community college computer labs in the 4 or 5 prisons where they exist was to use the same image. Now the goal is for us to obtain in all the prisons the Palo Verde online model that we've been piloting for several years actually now.
Yeah, it's at least 2 years.
And Devin was instrumental in helping get that set up. So why don't you talk to us a little bit, Devin, about what the Palo Verde online model is and how that...
Brandon, Devin, before you talk about Palo Verde, we have a question. Is there a place where they can see what the college image includes? What capabilities of programs, what all the image includes? Is there a place they can see that?
Is there a place where they could see that? No, there's not a place that they could see that, but there's no reason why we can't provide the software that's actually a part of that image now. So I'm going to make a note here as to what's on the image. That way we can provide that to others. That way they can see what did we put on that image, what are some of the things that we locked down. For instance, some folks might think, oh, well, you put Office on there. Well, we put some of the pieces of Office. We usually will pull Access off of it unless it's specific to the curriculum, and we'll just leave Excel and Word, and then we'll pull Outlook off of it. So we can provide a list of what's on the image. That'll probably answer a lot of questions as folks look through that.
Okay, great, awesome, thanks.
You bet. So as far as the Palo Verde online effort, that was a really interesting one. For a while we called it the Hollywood Project because it was actually somebody from Hollywood that came to us and said, I want to help inmates to be able to get better educated, and I want them to be able to get to a community college. And so this person actually provided funding to set up an infrastructure that allowed inmates to be able to sit down at a computer and actually log on via the internet to Palo Verde's community college, to where they're going to a specific server stack over at Palo Verde. So it's literally a point-to-point to where that's all the inmates can get to. but we really had to walk through and test that and bang at it for a while to make sure that we couldn't break it, because we also needed to make sure that the inmates were only communicating with the professor. They weren't communicating with other students. They weren't communicating with each other. And so it was a specific setup that we did for that. But it allows them to, again, sit down in a classroom in the prison, log onto that computer, and then log onto the server that's over at Palo Verde to be able to get assignments, to look at their homework, and to be able to go through and do those things. So a very interesting project, and really that is what started it for us, as far as can we provide a safe, secure, controlled environment for the inmates that they can access information via the outside. And we've been able to prove that, and that's actually been in place, I believe it's for at least 3 semesters, it may be 4 now. And it's worked really well. There's been a lot of work on the side of Palo Verde, though. They really had to do a lot of work as far as setting up a specific server. Anytime they change classes, then they have to go through and retrofit that server. So it's not an easy process, but is it a doable process? Yes. Probably the other thing that we found as we went through that, as far as the institution, because that's actually over at Ironwood State Prison, is that they had to figure out how do we get an inmate from A yard over to C yard, and I don't even remember where the classroom is over there, but the other thing that you have to keep in mind is that, you know, when inmates are assigned to a yard, they can't just walk over to another yard to go to school. Many times it is provided in that specific yard. And so if the yard was locked down, it became difficult for the inmate to actually get over to the classroom that he needed to. And so there were times that we actually had to come up with alternatives of how is this inmate going to be able to get to the classroom. And we'll talk more about that later in the other technology pieces. But Palo Verde really was the piece that started it for us as far as technology and can we allow inmates to get to specific sites. Any other questions on that? If not, we'll probably jump to the next slide. All right, so as far as technology and what is allowed, you can see on the yes side and the no side that there's a lot of technology that inmates have access to, but keep in mind that in some sense it may be limited or dumbed down. And then even on the no side, even though it says no, that's actually changing. And that's probably the biggest message that Brandon and I want to get across to everybody, is that when it comes to the technology that inmates have access to, that's changing. And part of that is because of technology, part of that is because of the policies that we have here, those are changing as well. So as far as what is allowed, desktops, laptops, you know, general desktops, again, it's an image that's been created that's modified, that it's locked down to where the inmate is not able to do just anything and everything. It has a specific purpose and specific programs that we want them to be able to get in to use. Generally, inmates are not allowed to have laptops on their own. Usually it's under supervision. So for instance, the GED test that they take, the inmate actually takes that test on a laptop when a proctor is there in the room. Once the inmate is done, the proctor actually takes a laptop, walks into another room, plugs it in, uploads the test to the internet. So inmates do have access to laptops, but it's not unsupervised. As far as the thumb drives, currently right now, we only allow inmates to use thumb drives that are encrypted unless there's been an exemption put in place, and I'll talk about that on another slide. When it comes to printers, inmates do have access to printers as long as the printer has been caged, and literally we do put the printer in a cage, and that is so the inmate is not able to just sit there and print out whatever they want without it being reviewed. And so the printer is in a cage to where the teacher or the other staff member that is in the classroom is able to retrieve the printouts for the inmate, review it quickly, and then hand it to the inmate. E-readers or tablets, this is a new area that we jumped into about a year and a half ago, probably about a year and a half ago. It's listed as an e-reader, customized because it's really a dumbed down e-reader. It has very limited capabilities. and we'll talk about that in a minute as well. CDs and DVDs, the institutions have specific policies on what the inmates are allowed to have as far as CDs and DVDs, but they do have access to them specific for learning. And then the last thing that you see there on the yes side is kiosk-type computers, and that's really a new technology that we are looking at bringing into not only the institution and into the reentry centers, but also into the housing units. We are looking at bringing in kiosk-type computers into the housing units that will allow inmates to have access to additional services. On the no side, as far as tablets, that's just tablets in general. However, an inmate actually is able to buy a tablet from the commissary. It's a very dumbed down tablet. It's basically it's like an MP3 player, or some games that they're able to purchase on their own, and that's through what's called the commissary. And then non-customized e-readers we do not allow. For instance, if a family member purchased an iPad or the inmate wanted to purchase an iPad, we don't allow that at this point. Questions on that slide? Okay, why don't we go ahead and go to the next one. As far as the computers, you'll see on this slide the current standard that we have as far as desktops. It's an HP 800 G2 Mini. It's basically an all-in-one device that we refer to it. It's a very small footprint desktop where it actually attaches to the back of a monitor. You can see the specifics there as far as the RAM, as far as the hard drive, and those things. It's currently it's a Microsoft Windows 7. The latest image that we put out there also has Office 2013. Previous ones were 2010, but the latest image that we have, it's for 2013. And then depending on the area and the focus, could have a number of different software packages on it, typing programs, and trying to think of some of the other ones, and I'm drawing a blank. So, but there are a number of software programs that they do have access to that they're able to use. As far as the laptops, that's the current standard of laptop that we use now. But again, the laptops are really specific as to where we allow them and who has access to them. It's not a general item that all of the inmates are able to use right now. So keep that in mind, that inmates do not just walk around with laptops. Questions on that slide? If not, we could go ahead and go to the next one. When it comes to flash drives, this is probably the biggest one that we are, well, I don't want to say struggling with, but this is the biggest one that we are at a point that we need to come up with a better solution. Up until this point in time, on the staff side of the network, staff are, and when I say staff, CDCR staff, teachers, custody, they're only able to use encrypted thumb drives. A number of years ago, we changed the policy here in the department, and that's actually a statewide policy. It's not just this department. If you have media that is mobile, meaning on a laptop or on a thumb drive, and it is personal or confidential and it has the potential to be, it's supposed to be encrypted. And so 5 years ago, we changed our policy to where only encrypted thumb drives are approved to be used on the CDCR network. And so that's what we have been doing on the inmate side as well. However, I can't think of a case where an inmate actually would have data that's supposed to be personal or confidential on a thumb drive. And so we are looking at that to how do we provide the opportunity for inmates to be able to store their homework, their assignments, to be able to save them, to be able to work from them, and do it in such a way that is not hiding or disclosing information. Currently, right now, in a couple of situations that we have, a couple of the education areas, they actually use the encrypted thumb drive. It's not easy, though, because the thumb drive has a password on it. The teacher needs to know what the password is, but the inmate is not supposed to be sharing what the password is. And it's really created a workload that is a little bit much. So we are looking at doing unencrypted thumb drives specific to that area, that it would have to have an exemption. and the warden would actually have to sign off on it, and so would the information security officer. So as far as flash drives, currently encrypted is what we use, but we are looking at going towards unencrypted. In addition, OPs or operational procedures need to be in place for that institution and for that classroom as far as a check-in, check-out process and a management process. So there are real specifics about that. Questions on that slide? If not, we can go ahead and go to the next one. As far as e-readers, e-readers are something that the department jumped into about a year and a half ago, and the department purchased a little over 7,000 of these e-readers, and I don't remember if that's how many are actually deployed.
We have about close to 5,000 deployed, and
okay.
and right now I'm not exactly sure because college just started.
Okay.
And
the main thing to be aware of with this is that this is really what broke the mold. This e-reader project that we put in place really caused a lot of I'm trying to say this in a nice way. It caused a lot of concern for a lot of security-minded folks because we were allowing inmates to have access to a device that they had never had access to, and they would be able to walk around with it. You really need to keep in mind that inmates are in a secure area. There's a lot of control. There's a lot of concern as far as contraband, as far as smuggling things around the institution, and so this was now bringing in a new device that really custody needed to be aware of and how it was going to be used. The device is again, it's very dumbed down. There's no external input, output. It's very specific as far as what can be put on it, where it can be taken. But the e-reader device is a device that we had built specifically for CDCR by an outside vendor. We gave them specific requirements as far as the size, clear plastic, security screws that had to be used for it, Wi-Fi had to be disabled, things along those lines. But the e-reader devices are a device that the inmates are able to use. They're able to check them in and out of the classroom. Each night their additional content can be loaded onto those via a cart that they put all the e-readers into. It is definitely not a perfect process, and we have definitely learned a lot of things as we've gone through this. Probably one of the first things that we learned was that this was a device that we could actually use for other things and other classes and other content such as anger management and family relations and things along those lines. But those type of classes are outside of the semester system, and the content that the content management system that we actually put in place was specific to semesters. And so there's definitely some learning on that we need to come up with a different system that would allow us to have a little bit more freedom as far as different types of content and how and when we can use that. But what the e-readers has done is that it's given us an area, it's given us the opportunity to bring these devices in, show them that we can do it in a safe and a secure manner, that they can be used for learning, and it can be used for programs that will benefit the inmate. So we are already looking at, what are we going to be doing next? Is it going to be an e-reader? Is it going to be a tablet? And so that already has us looking at next steps and what can we do to make that better. Questions on that slide? All right, why don't we go ahead and go to the next one.
We have one question that just came in. Are you guys looking at upgrading the e-reader to a higher performance model?
Go ahead.
Yes, we are. We actually received some funding, and what we can do with the current e-readers is to do a software update that will allow us to load material whenever we want instead of waiting for the semester. It also enables the video capability, so we can store videos as well for educational purposes.
Great. One more question. We know it has been hard to find a list of what books are available from the vendor and what all you can put on the e-reader. So is there a list available?
Right now, about 46% of all the content on the e-readers is open source, and we're encouraging all the colleges, if they can, as they design courses, to use open source textbooks. So I have asked the vendor to prepare a list, or I think it's going to be probably a portal that they can access that will list all the different books that are available through their system. So we'll have a list of all of the free books or the open source books, but we'll also have a list of all of the other books with the ISBN numbers. That way, if you are designing a course and you cannot find an open source book but want to use an ebook, you can design your course based on a book that exists, that's in the system, because right now we're only able to get maybe 60% of all the books that are out there are available electronically. And we do have access to quite a wide variety of books. So that's where we're going with that. So we should have that available very soon.
Okay, great. One other question. So if the e-readers, you know, they have some capability for programs, how do programs go about getting considered and approved to use them for their program?
A lot of it is based on supply and demand. And we keep a very tight, we keep track of exactly where the e-readers are and when they're in use, and we can actually see from our own management system when they're turned on and when they're not, and what content is loaded on them by prison. So if a prison has some sitting in a closet somewhere not in use, we know it. And so case in point, several of the colleges reached out just this last semester that are face-to-face colleges, because remember, the e-reader project started before SB 1391. Mm-hmm. We never even imagined we'd have face-to-face college, and the e-readers were designed initially for the correspondence colleges. So the first couple semesters we only used them with the correspondence colleges. This latest semester we opened it up to others as we have them available. So there are a number of colleges using them now throughout the state. So there's really no definite answer, because it's kind of a supply and demand thing, and I would imagine that they're going to be kind of a hot item out there, and people are going to want them, and as we move into new technology and move into more of the tablet technology, we'll have more of these devices. So, but the way to do it, I would say that the easiest way and the message that you're going to receive for other things is you need to call my office or contact Sarita Matani, and her information is on this presentation. If you contact what we call headquarters first and let us work things out for you, it'll be a lot more efficient than going through your local warden or the college teacher there, the college coordinator at the site, if you need something in terms of e-readers and any other technology help.
Great. Yeah, I think that answers that question. Thank you.
All right, why don't we go ahead and go to the next slide. That's one where it's internet. Again, I already talked a little bit about this. This is the Palo Verde College effort that we have down at Ironwood State Prison. What we have actually done is that we have created what's called the inmate network. The inmate network is what allows an inmate to actually sit down at a computer and log on to that computer as the inmate, versus a generic, student log on that's used in other classrooms. This is specific to that inmate. He has a network logon. It's no different than a staff logon. Shouldn't say it that way. It is different than a staff logon. It only allows them specific access to those resources that are on that inmate network. And that inmate network is actually connected to the internet that allows them to get out to the Palo Verdes College. We are actually looking at that to where how could we expand that to get out to other resources. And so that's what we are doing with that now. Again, technology continues to change, and it changes quickly. And some of these new technologies are giving us the ability to be able to push the boundaries as far as where can we go with the inmate access and what are some of the things that they can do. Problem is that we can't do it quickly enough, fast enough. But what we are doing at Ironwood State Prison is truly monumental. It is just big changes in what we are doing. And what we do there is with the intent that it'll be replicated at other prisons. So big things.
One of the projects we're using to leverage that and to be able to replicate the infrastructure at other prisons is called the Career Technical Education Media Evolution. And these are internet-based testing sites for students that are taking career tech ed classes, because many of our courses that we teach, the assessments for those courses are only available online. So we've been forced to create these testing labs. I think we have about 7 or 8 of them set up already. 6, and we're working to roll the rest of them out throughout the state during this next year. But in order to create an internet-based testing lab, we need to have internet access or an internet drop in that particular room. So in some areas, we're going to be able to capitalize on that by creating some wireless access points and looking at the idea of how could we create classrooms that have more web access and model it after the Ironwood State Prison Palo Verde project.
Questions on that slide?
Yeah, we have a question. So on the inmate network that you have set up, is there some capability for them to do some research and have access to research materials?
At this point, no. But again, that's changing. What we are doing with the CTE network and the access that they need for that, that's where we're testing it out over on the Ironwood State Prison Network. So we have the capability to do that, but we haven't gone to that point yet. So currently, no, but we will be going there, yes.
We're also looking into some offline research capabilities that could be available in our libraries and perhaps even in the living units on some of these kiosks that Devin was referring to, where they can access information for research and writing papers. It's definitely on our radar, and it's coming.
Okay, great. Good to know.
All right, why don't you go ahead and flip to the next slide. That was you.
So we talked about this a little bit before, and that's who do you go to if you want to just cut to the chase and have an answer to a question. Sarita Matani, who's also on the line today, she is the statewide college coordinator for all college projects, and she's a good starting place to call her, and she's not going to have the answer to specific institution questions that perhaps the college coordinator or the custody staff might answer at the site. But when it's bigger picture items like, I'd like to install a computer lab, or I'd like to purchase computers, or we would like to put some specific information on e-readers, or we're really having a problem with our e-readers. Those kind of issues, you're much better off starting with her and headquarters here, because that way we immediately work with the people that are at the top of the organizational structure and make things happen more quickly. What has happened in the past is that we have wardens in the system that are very excited about rehabilitation and building their programs. And sometimes they will unknowingly give permission to do things that is not allowable through the EIS policies, the technology arm of CDCR. And things get started, and you go down the road for a few months and start procuring equipment and whatnot, and then we find out that it was the wrong way to do it. And if you would have started with headquarters first, then you're much better off. I think that some of you on the phone can probably attest to the fact that when you work with us first, things work out a little better. I can't say that we're perfect, but that's the way to do it.
Next slide.
So on this next slide, it's really similar to the last response. If you want to order any technology, and I'm not really sure why you would want to purchase a whole computer lab. As time goes by and the internal CDCR infrastructure is improved and our computers are updated, in many cases the colleges should be able to use the computers that are already there in the system. But there may be times when you want to or need to procure your own equipment. All procurement is done here at headquarters, and so once again, run that through Sarita, and she'll steer you in the right direction to make sure that what you're purchasing is allowable, is the proper equipment, and we immediately work in partnership with EIS to make sure that this is a joint project from the beginning.
Next slide.
Same answer to the last question, really. It's running things through Sarita first, and she can make those contacts and make sure that the vendor and the institution are all in sync. If you're dealing directly with the institution, sometimes there are problems. An example would be equipment is delivered and it's sitting in the institution's warehouse on a loading dock somewhere, and we don't know it's there, and the institution may not know that it's arrived, and there's a certain process that has to occur, asset tags applied to each item that happen there at the institution. So in order to make sure that things happen in a more proficient way, if we know that it's what's going on, then Sarita can help kind of blaze a trail for you.
Next slide. So as far as support and maintenance, that's where my staff come in. As far as the IT staff that are out in the field in the institution, they will literally configure and get everything set up as far as the computers, and then support and maintain it ongoing. Meaning if there's any troubleshooting that needs to be done, something's broke or something needs to be re-imaged, the teacher would just contact the IT staff that are actually there at that institution, and they would work with them. The institution staff, the IT institution staff that are out there, they actually work with my staff that are here at headquarters. They're the ones that create the images and get things configured. That way it'll run across the board. Okay, unless there's questions, go ahead and go to the next slide, please.
The answer to this question is the same as the others, and really if you start with the Office of Correctional Education, with my office here, with Sarita, we will immediately reach out to EIS, to the leaders there, and make sure that this project gets deployed in the proper way, especially if it's software updates and whatnot. often those software updates, if one college wants an update, then maybe all the other colleges would want an update, and so that would require us changing the image. And we have a team here in Sacramento that just works on these images. So they can change the image, and then we can roll it out to all institutions that need the new image. But the message is work through headquarters first.
All right, next slide. So we do have existing hardware, software, that's out there. Some of it may be a little bit on the old side. What we have been trying to do is that we've been trying to keep the desktops on the staff side, the custody side, to where they're at least 5 years old. Every now and then we've been able to replace something because we got a newer shipment in, and so we've got computers that are only 4 years old. And so we will actually use those in the inmate areas, the inmate education areas. They can get another year or 2 years out of them before we actually have to go back through and fund. So a lot of it is going to depend on what it is that we need to do or want to do. If it's newer software, it may not work on the older hardware that we have out there, and so really it's going to be a case-by-case basis as times. If it's a standard software that a number of the other colleges are using, we already know what that would need to work on, so it's really going to depend. One of the things to keep in mind is the size, and I want to throw that out there because I don't think some people realize how big CDCR is. Brant mentioned at the beginning we have 35 institutions statewide, and those 35 institutions have approximately 29, I think it's a little over 29,000 computers that are on the network that are used by staff. That's just the staff side. As far as the inmate side, there are approximately 13, the last time I looked it was somewhere between 13 and 14,000 computers that inmates have access to when it comes to classrooms, education areas, clerks, and things along those lines. Take that 29,000, add it to the 13 to 14,000, that's how many computers 150 people support. So anytime that you're wondering, well, why is it taking so long? Well, because I have 150 people that support over 40,000 computers. Half of those computers, about 60% of those computers are actually on a network. The inmate computers, those are not on a network yet. So anytime anything needs to be done to an inmate computer, my staff have to get up from their desk, walk across the prison, go through 3 sally ports, check into 2 different guards, show their ID, and then get to the classroom and sit down and actually touch that computer. And so it can take time. And so I wanted to make sure that there was a sense of the size and the complexity of what happens when it comes to supporting that technology. So
I like how you say that the inmate computers are not on a network yet.
Yes, and that is true. And again, we talked about that at the beginning, that's really where our focus is. We know that we need to have inmate computers on the network. The infrastructure has been put in place specifically at Ironwood to make that happen, and we've already mirrored it at other institutions. It's just a matter of putting in the additional cabling. So that is where we're headed. It's not going to happen overnight. It'll take at least a year, maybe even 2 years. That's really is where we're headed, and that is going to give community colleges, UC colleges, and the inmates access like they've never seen before. And so it is exciting. It's really it's pretty cool to see where this is going and how it's going to happen, and you guys are really going to enjoy what's going to happen next. That's all we have as far as the presentation. I don't have any other comments or follow-up. Brand, unless there's something that you have, and I guess at this point, Laura, we can go ahead and open it up for additional questions.
Okay, great. Yeah, we do have some questions that have come in that we have not been able to ask yet. So one question that came up was, do the laptops have the same image as the desktop?
Generally, whenever we create an image for a desktop, we want it to mirror the laptop. That way it's going to be the same. There may be some little nuances with that image, but I would say overall the image is going to be the same.
Another question I'll read. What is your standing process for refreshing an image on a device when the operating system becomes corrupted or fails in some way?
The standard process is to pull it out, wipe it, and re-image it. It's pretty easy. I guess a lot of it also depends on some of the troubleshooting, meaning when you say corrupted, does that mean a hard drive's been corrupted and they've got to put a new hard drive in it, pull out the old hard drive, put in a new one? When it comes to the inmate computers, 99% of them do not save data on those hard drives, so it's merely just an image with no data. And so we have no problems of just wiping it and putting it back on. Generally, the computers are not wiped and re-imaged that often because it's a lengthy process. I know some other colleges and some other labs, they actually wipe those images on a daily process. We don't do that. So it's not that often that we'll actually re-image a computer. But part of that is because we also have a software piece on there that actually locks down the image to where you can't make changes to the image. So that's part of the reason why it's not refreshed that often.
Okay, and when you say re-imaged, there's a follow-up question. Do you mean locally re-imaged?
Yes, locally re-imaged, meaning somebody actually has to go out there with a CD, pop it in, and put a new image on it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Another question I'll read. In addressing servers, what is the policy regarding establishing an isolated AD domain for allowing secured file posting to a file service for the instructor?
We would need to work with our information security office. We would also need to work with our infrastructure group and then go through and work through the whole process. That's basically what we have set up now for Palo Verdes, to where the instructor is able to post the content, the inmate is able to actually pull it down from that. I don't, and now that I'm thinking that through, I'm not sure if there's a logon process on the Palo Verde side or if it's just the CDCR side that the inmate does, and it may be both. And I'm not sure, so I think I'd have to step back and verify how is that set up for authentication.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that answered the question.
Yeah, I think so. All right, a few more. Question about flash drives. What is the process for the faculty to load the instructional materials onto the flash drives to bring inside? How do they put anything on the flash drive?
Actually, Brant and everyone, this is Rebecca Silver. Maybe explain how Chafee uses the flash drives, because I know those flash drives never leave, or at least I don't think they leave CIW. Yes. And what options there, and then connected with that is the question of then how can faculty bring in electronic materials for the students?
I'm just looking through some notes here that my staff provided, just to see if that actually talks about it, and it really doesn't. We would have to go through and verify that process, because technically, if somebody is coming into the institution, it can only be a state piece, meaning state property. If it is a non-state USB device, they actually have to have written authorization to bring in that device into the institution. Otherwise, it's treated as contraband. Once it's into the institution, then it is a check-in, check-out process. And that teacher would probably need to work with the IT staff to come up with a process of, okay, here's the master, how do I get this copied onto the other one? So I don't have a complete answer for you, and that's because each site that's doing it, it's going to be a different piece.
This is Rebecca Silbert again. To clarify for everyone on the webinar, the way Chafee uses the flash drives is to save student work from class to class. So they have a room with computers, and then students are assigned a flash drive. Those flash drives are locked, remain at CIW, and are controlled not by the Chafee staff, but are locked and unlocked by correction staff within the institution. So when class is starting, correction staff unlocks the drawer, gives them the flash drive, they pull up their essay, and then at the end of class they're collected and locked up again. That's a different question than how to bring in educational materials in an electronic format. I believe there are, anyone please comment if you have been able to do that successfully. I do know that in some of the locations they have worked out something with the principal and the security staff as to what they can bring in and how. A lot of them use just paper for student resources. Obviously, as the networks are built up, Devin, people could get internet access to resource and research materials, but that's not existing yet. Correct. We can put this on Brant and Sarita's radar and see if they can craft an answer that we can distribute to the listserv.
Sure. But I think what you just stated is correct as far as that process, so yes.
Great. Okay, so I changed the slide. We had a question about contact info, so I'm going to leave this up, but we're still taking questions and answering questions, but I moved to the contact slide, so those of you watching can go ahead and be looking at that. Few more questions. Because there are higher ed sites in the prisons, have you reached out to CENIC, C-E-N-I-C, for access to bandwidth through the consortium?
We're aware that they exist, and we haven't really got to the stage yet where that's even necessary, because we're still at the infrastructure stage and putting the cabling in and whatnot. But in terms of where the bandwidth comes from, yes, we're aware of CENIC, and I'm not sure if EIS is working with them on other projects or not, but
not at this point.
Okay. Thank you. So the college image, will the info and the list of what all is included on that, will that also be made available to non-CDCR agencies such as local county sheriff's departments if they wanted to use it?
If they wanted to use it, yes. I mean, literally, it's going to be a list of what is the software that's on that device, on that desktop.
Okay,
and
great.
As Brant stated earlier, the intent is really to build an image, a desktop, that can be used for other purposes, meaning that we've got 27 computers in a classroom. It's got the college image on it. If there's other things that we need to add to it so that other people can come in and use that classroom with that image, we could do that.
Okay, thank you. Another question. So in terms of putting anything on a cloud, are you talking about a statewide secure cloud that's anticipated in the future? And if so, how far into the future?
I would say that's an option, but I would say that's far out in the future. If I were to peg a time frame, I would say 3 to 5 years. What do you think? Brand shaking his head yes. I mean, here in the state of California, we are encouraged to look at anything and everything cloud first. We have been looking at cloud offerings for a lot of different things. Brant being one of them, I know that he has been looking at different cloud offerings. So we're aware of those cloud offerings. We know what some of those options are, but I would say that's off into the future as far as doing that. Now, having said that, that could change in a heartbeat to where all of a sudden next week that's what we start doing. But at this point, I would say that's a far future thing.
And just to kind of put in perspective, we have met and continue to meet with the leaders of every major technology company that's out there.
You name them, we've probably met with them. Google being one of them. Amazon Web Services. So we've met with even the big cloud services of what are some of the different things that they have and how could it work.
Great. Next question. Is there a way that as educational institutions they could help rank say, highest technology priorities for the system. So some structure to help, give a structure to ordering the implementation for improvement.
I think that, as I stated before, we actually know what we're doing, but that it may not seem like it, but it doesn't mean that we don't value input from the field. So even something as simple as a survey that you could run through the listserv would be interesting to see what the responses are.
We'd be happy to do that. So to everyone on the call and also to Brandon and Devin, this is Rebecca Silbert at the Opportunity Institute. Feel free to shoot us an email with your thoughts so we can do the options, and we can send out just a short survey monkey. And Devin and Brant, you can send that as well. We'll do that afterward, and we'll send it out in the next couple of weeks.
Sure. One of the things to keep in mind and remember is that CDCR is driven by two things, and that's legislative mandates and court rulings. And there are times that we have to change direction based on legislative mandates and court rulings. And so we may want to do something different, but we're instructed to do otherwise because of those two things. So it would be interesting to see what the survey results respond to see, are we going in the right direction? And if we're not, we may not have a choice because of some of those things that have happened recently. But I think that would be interesting to see.
It's going to take some effort to even craft the questions. You need to ask the right question, and maybe make it so the responses can be rank ordered, and it comes back in a hierarchical priority.
Yeah, we can do that. So thanks, everyone. Just send us an email afterward with your thoughts on that. I'm going to jump, this is Rebecca again, I'm going to jump out of Laura's list of questions because we got a few at the end about the things I said earlier about flash drives. We've had 2 responses from facilities or educators that are faculty bring materials in through the flash drive, so that's working for them. And then at the end of this, we're going to unmute Laura Alvarado from Chafee, who wanted to add to that. But first, we're going to address some of the earlier questions. So we'll loop back onto the bringing materials in question in a minute.
All right, another question. Is there discussion about student access to the college registering system, college testing, and other matriculation needs?
Well, one thing that we could think about doing as far as like the AccuPlacer test or anything like that, as we roll out these CTE testing labs and have greater web access, in theory, the image could be changed for that lab, and we could add an additional whitelisted site, which would be the site to get to the AccuPlacer test or whatever the test is. So in the future, that's what we would want to do.
As far as access to other things, like registration or whatever, keep in mind that any time that we allow an inmate to go out to the internet, there is a chance that if we send them to a site, unless we've locked it down specific to where he can only hit that one page, he may be able to get out to other sites. And let me give you an example without trying to air too much dirty laundry. About 3 years ago, we did a test pilot to where we allowed inmates to get out to some of the government websites. What we didn't realize, because we didn't go and look at it closely enough, was that they were able to get to a page that allowed them to send an email out, sort of like a forum. One of the inmates decided to send an email to Governor Schwarzenegger. Well, actually, it had to have been longer than 3 years ago, because anyway, yeah, that was, so whatever it was, Schwarzenegger got a threatening email from one of the inmates from the forum, and CHP took it seriously, and we had to shut it down. So keep in mind that anytime that we allow folks to go out to the internet, they like to be creative and see where else they can go. So as far as access to a registration page, I'm sure we could do that as long as it's going to a page and not to an entire domain, if that makes sense.
And what about the option of having at each prison an internet-connected computer that would be utilized by the college staff, you know, with security personnel there to do things like the registration online so they don't have to do everything on paper, then bring it back to their campus and have it entered there.
So you're saying the college person, meaning the volunteer, or the college person would actually be doing the registration with the inmate sitting there?
That's what we're trying to get around what's happening now for a lot of the colleges, which is that the registration and other documents are all filled out in paper and pencil and then brought back to the college where someone has to upload the information. So if you could have the college counselor go to the prison and have access to a computer with connectivity, they could do a lot of that on site.
Yeah, I mean, another way to do it would be to do an offline version of the registration. They could register via a tablet, and then when the tablet syncs in the storage device, it uploads the data to a thumb drive, and the college teacher walks off with the data, and they can send it to the college via the web, and at least it's all typed in.
So currently, the only people that we allow onto the network to have network access are staff. I would have to go back and verify, do we allow volunteers, because that's basically what the college person would be coming in as, college employee. They would be coming in as a volunteer. Do we allow access to volunteers on our network? And my first response is, I don't think we do, but I'd have to go back and verify that. So just to put it in perspective, our teachers that work for us as staff members don't even have internet access at their desk. Right, in the classroom, because that's in an area where there's a potential for an inmate to be non-supervised. So it's one of those things where you keep in mind that we have the technology, and how do we blend that with the policy that's in place as far as security.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, another question. What about faculty who want to bring in their own laptop as opposed to copying everything onto a flash drive? What does that look like? Is it possible, and is that local or headquarters?
That would definitely be a headquarters start thing, because you would need to get an exemption from the information security officer. Once you have that, then you would need to work with the local site that you would be going to, and you would literally have to get an exemption from the warden. There may be one or two other exemptions in there that you would need to give, but is it possible? Yeah, it's possible, but it's not going to be something that you get overnight. It would definitely be a process that we would have to work through to actually do that. I know with a couple of programs that we have, it's non-state equipment that's been brought in, but again, it went through a real stringent process. So is it possible? Yes.
We're going to try to unmute Laura right now.
Okay, I need to get going.
Okay, Laura and Jacqueline, who I believe I unmuted Jacqueline.
Yes,
We're
all together.
Okay,
Yes,
great.
we're all together.
Chris Flores too.
All right,
morning.
Great.
The Chafee team.
Yes.
Yay.
Some of
You wanted to add something about bringing instructor materials into the prison.
Correct. Our instructors are allowed to bring in flash drives. There are some provisions, though. They carry with them a memo from the warden. The flash drives are clearly Chafee marked. They are subject to inspection at any given time by any CDCR staff. They have to stay on their person at all times. The inmate or our peer inmate tutors do not have access or cannot have access to the instructor's flash drives. And they can only have educational materials on that said flash drive pertaining to CIW or CIM, to our particular institutions. So they're kept very close to the instructor, but they are allowed to utilize those to bring in their materials from the college into our college setting at our institutions.
Great, thank you. And Brant, let's try to work on having that happen more places. That would be great. We know we've gotten feedback that it's happening 2 other places as well. We're getting close to the end, so we want to jump to some of the last questions. One question, are the inmate students receiving any training on the use of computers and the technology as it advances?
The answer is yes. We do have available computer instruction in Microsoft Office Suite, and many of the students have been through that, and actually they're able to obtain certification. We've had a little bit of a stall there with the certification because now it's only available online, but we're getting that back up and going. But yes, as Devin said, there's over 10,000 computers out there in the system, and a lot of those are for computer labs for computer instruction.
Okay. I'm going to jumping ahead to the end to get someone who hasn't had a chance to ask a question yet. Our greatest need is to give students the math and English assessments, the placement tests, which is currently AccuPlacer in a lot of places, but my understanding is that community colleges are replacing that with their own models. Nonetheless, still an online assessment. It can be done via paper and pencil, but it's much more difficult and expensive. Is this something that is on your radar as you're working on the networking?
Yes. Similarly,
the Community College Tech Center has requirements for students to have the Community College ID. Is this something about which you are aware and working with them on?
I'm not aware of that, and that's something that we could certainly work on. I don't know. I mean, I think the benefit of that would be that once they leave prison, if they happen to parole to that community, they would be already in the system.
Okay. And then we got a question about Chafee's agreement with their warden and asked if we can put it in writing. And yes, we can do that here. I will say, I think Brandon and Devin will probably not, but I will say that this is one of the instances in which different prisons may differ, both because of different personalities, but also different levels. CIW is a women's prison, so happy to put it in writing and distribute it, but everyone should work with headquarters and their own yard as well. Oh, and someone just chimed in and said their students get a community college ID from the Los Rios district, so that's happening.
These sound like good listserv questions.
They do, yes. Yes, so please start populating the listserv. I think that about ends our questions, and we're getting to the end of our time. We want to thank Brant and Devin immensely for this time. We know not everyone's questions have been answered, but we hope we've saved everyone some time and pulled everything together. We wanted to let you know that we are building a website that will have all of your contact information on it and the nature of your programs. We will also be curating the listserv to put some of those questions and answers on the website so that as people ask questions on the listserv, it's not currently searchable. So we're going to curate that and put it on the website. We're aiming for a Thanksgiving launch for that website to help you all out. And we've had people chime in to say thank you to Devin and Brant, and also thank you to Sarita very much, which we second.
Well, thanks to all of you for hosting this.
Great. All right, everyone, have a great Friday.
Thank you.